Stick around because in this video I'm talking about 5 must-haves while serving in the United States Army. What's up my friends? Welcome to an all-new video. In this one I am talking about 5 things you must have while serving in the Army. More specifically active duty, but also I'm going to use the term must have a little loosely, all right? There's some of these that sure, you might be able to kind of get away with not having, so don't get all bent out of shape and be like, oh, I could definitely get away with not having that in the Army because of this and this and this, right? I'm using the term must have a little loosely with some of these items. Some of these items though, you need them when you're in the Army. You're going to find that you're going to have a difficult time without them. So kind of just follow along with me, all right? Bear with me here, all right? We'll see what some of these items are. So with that being said, let's not waste any time. Let's dive into that very first one that I've got on my particular list. Number 1 on my list is a cell phone, all right? Most people nowadays have a cell phone, so it's probably not very common that you don't have a cell phone, but you're gonna find that you need that, especially with active duty Army, because people need a way to get a hold of you. This wasn't always the case back in the day, back in the early 2000s, the 90s especially, because cell phones weren't really a big thing, but in modern Army today, you got to have a way to be, contacted when there's alerts, when there's urinalysis, when there's a formation, when there's something that comes up and you have to be contacted to report, to do this mission, to get things done. A cell phone is going to be one of those things you need. That is a large piece of communication nowadays with soldiers. You're going to get text messages from your squad leader saying, hey, you got to be at this location for training, you got to do this. You need to be able to communicate with those squad leaders saying, hey, I'm running late, which is not a good thing, but it's good to have that communication, be able to tell them, hey, I'm running a little late, or whatever the case might be able to get hold of those squad leaders when you have questions. You're supposed to be at some training place and they give you the wrong location, you get a hold of them and call them up and say, hey, this isn't the right location, I need to find out where to go. Now, while it is not anywhere in any kind of Army regulation or anything like that that says you must have a cell phone, you're gonna find that if you don't have one, it's gonna be a big pain. So sure, you can try to be this rebel and be like, you know what, I don't wanna have a leash attached to me. I'm not gonna have a cell phone, or I'm not gonna give out my cell phone number to anybody. I'm gonna pretend that I don't have one. Well, what you're gonna end up finding is that there's gonna be times when you have slow days and they're like, all right, we're gonna go ahead and send everybody home, send everybody back to the barracks, those who live in the barracks, and go chill out, right? We don't have a lot going on and you don't need to be sitting around doing nothing. So have your phones ready, and if something comes up, we'll call you and we'll tell you to come back. Well, if you don't have a phone, guess what? You ain't going nowheres. You're sitting there doing nothing while everybody else is chilling, playing video games in their barracks rooms, going home, whatever the case is, and if something comes up, they get a phone call and come back in. But because you don't have a way to get contacted, you're just stuck sitting there doing nothing all day. So that's why I have cell phone right there at number 1, because it's pretty important. And leading into that, I want to give a thanks to the sponsor of this video, which is Armed Forces Mobile. So if you need a cell phone, maybe this is the place to check out. Armed Forces Mobile is a prepaid month-to-month cell phone service that includes multiple plans, including unlimited everything for only $55 a month. Now you can use your own phone or you can choose to buy one of their phones, but either way, it will operate on the nation's fastest 4G LTE network. And one of the really great things is 10% of all their proceeds go to their nonprofit, which helps out our nation's veterans as well as first responders. Now all you have to do to get set up with one of these accounts is go to www.myafmobile.com/chaos. There will be a link down in the description. And best of all, when you sign up, if you use the promo code SAVE, the $sign and the number 5, you can save $5 off that initial purchase. So now let's move on to number 2 on the list, and that one is going to be a vehicle of some sort. That one is going to be kind of one of those loose ones. Now, if you are active duty, in some cases, this is almost a must. I mean, sure, there are kind of ways that you could probably get around it, but you're going to find that certain situations are going to be a little bit of a hassle. So let's kind of run through some scenarios, and you can kind of make your own determination. You might have to wait until you get in the Army, get to your unit, whatever, to kind of make this determination of whether or not you need a car, whether you can deal with it not having a car, or you can't deal without having a car. Let's say the first scenario, you're a single soldier living in the barracks. So you have the barracks usually located in one location, and then sometimes the motor pool is nearby, or where you're working at is nearby, but not always. Sometimes you have your barracks here, and then where you have to work is actually on the other side of post or quite a ways down the road. So in those circumstances, you're gonna have to catch a ride. You're gonna have to, get one of the other soldiers to give you a ride. You're gonna have to walk down there. It might be really far, that might take you a while, but you're not gonna have like Uber. I mean, you can, but it's not gonna be very reliable on post, so it'd be really tough. Plus, that'd get kind of expensive after a while, having to always use Uber to get everywhere you have to go. They do sometimes have like shuttle services. In some cases, it's on a set schedule, but not always. Sometimes it's just like a, hey, this van is gonna be driving around, and they have little pickup stations, and if they happen to see someone at that pickup station, they'll pick you up and give you a ride. But that's not always super reliable, especially in the Army when you have a time frame that you're looking at. You have to be at a certain location at a specific time, and in the Army, you have to be there like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes prior, so that's not very reliable sometimes getting you there on time. So also, like, when you're new to a unit, you haven't quite made any friends, maybe you don't know the people that well, so it's kind of weird trying to ask people for a ride, especially if you have to do it all the time, having to ask someone for a ride. So it kind of comes in handy to have your own vehicle because you can get around. Now, I'm not saying go out and buy some expensive car that you can't afford. Maybe you just need to get something that can get you around from point A to point B until you get to a better status in rank to be able to earn a little bit more money to afford a nicer car. But when you're first starting off as a private, you might have to get some beater of a car that's just gonna get you from point A to point B to save you the time of having to always get rides, always have to try to get these little shuttle services to get you there. So sometimes it's very important having a car. So there might be a little bit of flexibility there. Maybe you don't need a car if you're living in the barracks. Maybe you can walk to where you're going, maybe you can't. Maybe you meet some good friends and you can constantly get rides. It just might have a little bit of flexibility, but you might see some circumstances that start getting really annoying, and it would have been, beneficial to have a vehicle. And when I'm talking about having that car, I'm mostly talking about like stateside, right? If you're stationed over in Germany, over in Korea, there's some cases where some individuals will have like a car, and that's cool and all, but for the most part over there, you can get away with not having a car. You're gonna have some way of being able to get around, and that'll be fine. You're gonna have probably things like usually your barracks located in the same area as your work. It's only usually when you're stateside that you have situations where your barracks might be located in a completely different location of where you need to work at. Now, if you are a married soldier, it's probably leaning a lot more towards the side of must-haves. So you're not gonna be able to go pile your family into, an Uber. Even if it's just you and your wife, you're just gonna always Uber everywhere you go, right? That's gonna be a little bit inconvenient. It's gonna get really expensive after a while as well. Now, if you're living off base, well, then you need a way to get on base to get to work, right? You could possibly take a taxi or an Uber, but not all of those individuals have access to get on post. So that's gonna be really flexible on whether or not you can. Plus, that's gonna get really expensive after a while. They don't really have like a bus service that goes from off post to on post. That'd be really a pain to be able to check the credentials of people on the bus to see if they're allowed to even be on post, kind of a thing. Usually when you're driving on base, someone has an ID card, and they don't check everybody in the car. They usually just check the driver. Sometimes they'll spot check and maybe check everybody, but not always the case. But it'd be really a pain to have to do that with a bus and a bus service coming on base. So that's most likely not going to be a thing. I don't know of any posts that have that. Maybe there is. I'd imagine it's a big inconvenience if they do have that, but that's not usually a thing where you can take some kind of public transportation to get on post if you live off post. If you live on post and you still have a vehicle, that's still gonna be really hard too. How are you gonna function with getting groceries, getting things? You're gonna always take Uber. So I'm going back to, I guess, if you're someone who thinks that you can rely on taxis and Uber and everything like that being in the Army, it's gonna be really inconvenient. So let's move on to the next one I have on the list, number 3, and that is going to be some kind of multi-tool like a Gerber. A lot of people think of, needing a Gerber or a multi-tool in situations of being a mechanic. And if you're not a mechanic, maybe you're like, I don't really need one, but that's not always the case. There's a lot of times when I just needed the function of having that knife that is on that Gerber or that multi-tool. There's a lot of other situations where those other tools come in handy. You might not think of it as you need this Gerber for doing something on a vehicle. It might be something else. It might be something as simple as just a piece of your Army equipment, and you want to use that Gerber maybe to tighten up some screws that have come loose, or cut some strings that are hanging off that have gotten all worn and tattered on a piece of equipment. You want to use that knife to cut it off, or even the pliers just to maybe bend something that you have to bend, or grab a hold of something that's stuck on your equipment, whatever the case might be. Multi-tool can be very useful. Some people have a multi-tool and a knife, and they'll kind of have a multi-purpose thing, but at a minimum, it's good to have a multi-tool. You actually, on active duty, will get issued a Gerber from supply, and that one works okay too, and you can utilize that, but some people like to go a little bit farther and get a little bit better of one than the Army issues you, and you might have maybe a supply that doesn't issue Gerbers, but a lot of units nowadays actually issue a Gerber. It's just a cheaper version of one that does the job, and sure, it'll get the job done, and you might be able to get away with not having to buy one, but that might not always be the case Army-wide. Next up on the list is number 4, and that is a simple digital watch. A lot of people have things like this, like a smartwatch, right? And those are great and everything like that, but it's good to also still have that digital watch, that just basic, simple one that if it gets jacked up while you're working in the motor pool, while you're in the field, not a big deal. You're not out a couple $100s because this watch was maybe only $5, $10, $20 from Walmart or something. So that's a good thing to have, is this basic one, especially since there's going to be also some situations where you can't have this smartwatch. You're going to have some locations where maybe you're doing some training, you're doing some other things, and you're not allowed to keep your cell phone on you. You're not allowed to have these smartwatches on you because it's a secure environment, and you have to lock that up. You have to leave it on your vehicle, whatever the case is, and it's good to still have that digital watch to still kind of keep track of time. Also, kind of a thing with like the smartwatches is, let's say you're like in the field or something, right? The battery on these things maybe only lasts maybe what, a few days or something like that. Digital watch is going to last you much longer. You might not have easy access to be able to charge your smartwatch when you're out in the field. You still got to maintain, what time it is, and make sure you can bug other people and find out what time it is. But it's easier just to have your own cheap digital watch. They're fairly cheap, and it's a good thing to have. Especially with the Army, you have to be on time. There's no such thing as being on time, really. There's either you're early or you're late. There's no being on time. So that simple digital watch really help you out. So let's jump into the next one at number 5, and that is having a pen and a notepad. This is very important. In some cases, a lot of people consider this as part of your uniform, to have a pen and something to write on. So you're going to have this. Usually it's in the form of a small little notepad. This may be kept in one of the pockets on your sleeves or in your pocket itself, in the cargo pocket. Maybe not always the cargo pocket. Sometimes they might get a little bit bulky in there depending on how large the notepad is, but usually have these small ones that just easily fit into the little side pouches of the uniform. And then a pen. You have little slots, like kind of little pockets on the sleeve of the uniform to actually insert a pen, or you can just simply put it in your pocket, but you got to have those items on you. Especially like you'll be doing things like maybe a briefing, maybe a class or something like that. And there's gonna be some leadership individual that's gonna be like, hey, why don't you have a pen and notepad out taking notes? Where's your guys' pen? Where's your notepad? Where's something to write on, right? And it's key to have that on you. Sometimes they'll inspect for it. It's a very important thing to be able to have. You always want to have something to write on. Some people nowadays try to use technology and they want to use their phone to be able to take your notes on, and that's pretty cool and all, but that's not really the standard of the Army, of how they want to do things. They want you physically write it down because they don't know maybe that you're taking notes on your phone. They think you're texting or you're doing something else. They don't want you whipping out your phone to take notes on, right? You're going to want to use a notepad and a pen. Some people get a little high speed and they have like these waterproof kind of cool notepads, and those are okay too, because especially like if it's out raining, you're out working, you don't want your notes getting ruined. I found sometimes it's kind of a pain to try to write on that paper sometimes, but not always. It just, I guess, depends on the quality of that waterproof paper, I guess. So that can be also an option too, of getting that waterproof notepad or just a regular notepad, however you kind of want to do it. But it's good to have that. You're going to probably be required in most cases. Someone's going to want to check that you have a pen and a notepad. Now, with these 5 items that I just kind of covered, keep in mind, not all of these apply for individuals that are in basic training or AIT, i.e. a cell phone. You're going to get that confiscated. You're going to get a chance to use that once in a great while. Often it just kind of depends on the leadership sometimes. A car you are not going to be able to have while you're in basic training. Some AITs will allow you to have it. Some of those longer ones sometimes, but for a lot of the shorter ones, 10 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever, they're definitely not going to let you have a car. A multi-tool, a little iffy, definitely most likely not during basic training, maybe during AIT. A digital watch is good to have. You will probably be allowed to have that in basic training or in AIT. Sometimes they have different restrictions, like it must have like a little cover over the face of the watch, or they have to be like a solid color watch. There's some kind of different standards usually at the basic training as far as what kind of digital watch you can have. You're not going to be able to have a smart watch, definitely for sure, while in basic training. You might get a little bit of leeway in AIT, but it's good to have that digital watch. Basic training AIT, you are going to be allowed to have like a pen and a notepad. In fact, it's probably going to be something you'll be required to carry around with you. So just keep those in mind. Some of these do apply to, maybe you can use some of these in AIT or basic training, but for the most part, I'm talking about your actual duty station once you were done with training. Now, there could be more than just these 5 things that I highlighted in this video. These are just ones that I thought of that I wanted to kind of highlight. Now, if you have something that you feel that is maybe a good requirement to have on you, if you are currently in the Army, maybe a veteran or whatever the case might be, leave some comments down below in the comment section. Let me know what you suggest that are maybe must-haves, maybe even still kind of using the term loosely of using the word must, but still, what are some must-haves in your eyes to have while you're in the Army? Now, if you have a question as far as maybe there's an item you think that maybe would be important to have while you're in the Army, or you want to know about if it was something good to have, then leave those comments down below in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer the questions that I can, and maybe some of my viewers will be able to help me out and answer your questions as well. If you enjoyed that video, slap a like on it, check out some recommended videos, links down in the description to Armed Forces Mobile, as well as my social media, Patreon, and much more. I'm ThatChrisChaos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. See ya.